You all know the deal. We start off with a few quick fire questions just to make sure our guests are human and one of us. So Sheilina, just to kick start, what was your favorite age?
Gosh, that's a really difficult one. I think anything from adulthood. After I left home, things got better. So everything from 20 onwards has been good and bad, but I've celebrated every bit of it.
I like it. What would we find on your nightstand?
I don't actually have one, funnily enough, but I do have a pull-out side table for my bed, which is generally piled with books and moisturiser. That's it.
And tell us a snapshot of an everyday small joy.
But the first hug in the morning with my daughter. She's 21 now, and thank God she still loves to hug and so on. So it's that first. So the routine these days is I text her to let her know I'm downstairs around 6 in the morning. She emerges around anywhere between 9 and 11, and the first thing we do is just hug. So that's my precious moment for every day, because she may not be here long term. You know, her job is to go off and do other things. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. You passed the test. You're so human.
So human and fallible, and also cry when things are meaningful. So yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, we usually kick off with you starting just to share a bit about your experiences, and then we'll go over to any questions people have. If you'd like to pop those questions into the box, that's absolutely fine, or you can unmute yourself and we can kick off from there. All right?
Okay. Tell me if I talk too long. It's one of those things of going, don't talk too long. So I'm Sheilina. I'm a single parent, and of course the daughter's the light of my life, and also the challenge of my life sometimes. The most difficult and the most joyous job I ever undertook was being a parent, even though I didn't anticipate doing it solo. In my free time, I'm a project and program manager. So what that means for those of you less familiar with project and program manager, it's basically getting things done. So I work on contract. I've been self-employed for over 30 years. And generally people will call me and say, Sheilina, we've got just the project for you. Can you sort this out? And I go into either new or troubled situations and bring people together to get the job done, whatever that job happens to be. In my time, I've worked in over 70 countries around the world. I've taught project management. I've developed new programs. I'm the past chief examiner for knowledge exams for the APM, which is the Association for Project Management. And then I've done all kinds of other things around personal and volunteer stuff. I think it's really important to give back. So I've talked with schools, and I've also volunteered with things like the NHS. I'm volunteering via Good Sam at the moment because I have a great respect for them. I've also done some voluntary consultancy work with the NHS because I think there are certain times where it's not about earning, it's about giving back. And they've taken care of both my daughter and I, and loved friends and so on. I could go on. I'll pause there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sheilina. So whilst people are thinking about any questions they have, I know, Sheilina, that you have some experience in the APM qualification and taking that. We've heard a little bit about Agile. We've heard a little bit about Prince 2. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about APM and any other qualifications that you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been involved with APM for almost 30 years, and also involved with PMI, which is the Project Management Institute that's based largely out of the US. As I mentioned, I'm the past chief examiner for APM's knowledge exams, so I know quite a lot about those as well, and indeed Prince 2, because it all sits in the same world. One of the challenges we have is there are so many organisations offering certifications and qualifications, and a lot of them, frankly, are BS. So, and that's not a positive acronym, it just is. But you're recording, so I'm not saying the word in full. That's the only reason, otherwise I'd have more colourful language for you. Let me try and break it as much as I can. If you are looking to get into project management, watch DVDs, watch YouTube clips, read books. There's so many articles and links. There's a wonderful website called businessballs.com, which is completely free, and Jay, I can give you details of websites and things afterwards. But going to the exams, Prince 2 has improved a lot over the years, but it is fundamentally a bureaucratic process. They have introduced the people stuff, but it is a very basic process. And actually, the most important thing around projects, as some of you obviously already know, is about the people aspects. It's interacting and communicating with people, but most importantly, listening, picking up the cues that go, this is all right, this is not all right, this feels comfortable. And Jay, you and I had that conversation separately as well. In some ways, the Prince 2 is great if you want to go into government type work. So it's very much a must have in government circles. The PMI, Project Management Institute, also offer a suite of certifications. Their most popular one is the PMP, the Project Management Professional. It is a multiple choice exam. It is US-based theory. I held the designation for 26 years. I surrendered it just at the end of last year, saying, do you know what, this doesn't serve me anymore. And it's because it's multiple choice, it becomes a memory test or an identification test. There are lots and lots of other courses, but if I hone in on the APM ones for a second, and I'll answer the question about not having work in a moment. But on the APM exams, there's something called the PMQ, which is the Project Management Qualification. It used to be known as the APMP. That is one of the most respected paper-based exams in the UK, and that's because it asks essay-style questions that you actually have to know something in order to do that. There is one that precedes that, which is the Project Management Fundamentals, PMF, and that is again a multiple choice, and I would not recommend investing in that. I know I do a lot with APM, but I'm not going to steer people into something that doesn't really add value. It's a foundation thing. If your company's paying for it, it's a nice to have. For people like me who are self-employed, don't spend your time on it. If you're going to get something at a starter level in project management, go for the PMQ, which is a project management qualification. It has more substance to it, and it's therefore more respected. And there's also a whole load of additional things. You'll have seen letters after my name. So I've taken the time to do things like get my RPP, Registered Project Professional, which is an accreditation from the APM. That is actually closing at the end of this year, so I do not recommend going for it because you'd have to pay a fee, and it's actually closing this year because of chartership. Chartership is the highest standard globally for project management, and it's something that I attained back in 2018, and I'm also an assessor for it now, and that's about recognizing a significant amount of professional and technical knowledge and experience. And then there's also fellowship, which again is about, and I got that back in 2016, I think, and that was very much around having given back to the profession. Fellowships more about what you've contributed than what you've gained or what you've achieved. Okay, so that tells you a little bit about that. I've got a couple of questions in the chat, so Jay, if it's okay, I'll just pop straight to those. Thank you. Kelly, I'll go to yours first of all. Saw the little grin appear, that's always nice, thank you. The question, for those of you who may not have seen it, is why did you go down the contract route? Well, first of all, I'm old. I'm going to be 58 this year, so I've lived a bit here and there. What happened was back in the 80s, I actually was employed. Many of you were not alive then, but I was, and I was going for it. I was made redundant 4 times in 1 year, and being left owing money in terms of they owed me money, left going, forgive me, Jay, what the, or FFS, I'll abbreviate appropriately. What am I going to do now? And I didn't actually choose the contracting route back then. What happened was one of the people that I had been working with at the time that the company went bust contacted me and said, we'd like you to run a project. And I went, you're joking, I know nothing. And they said, actually you do, and we want you. And that's how it began. And one of the things it taught me was actually sometimes other people do know better than you think you do, and trust when somebody gives you that kind of compliment, go with it, be open, as I was, to go, no, I don't think I do know anything, and then you learn as you go along. So that was how I fell into contracting and freelancing. And then I chose to do it because I had goals of my own. I had places I wanted to go, like China and Japan and Australia, and I wanted to go there and do work. And the way to do that for me was freelance. And then with having my daughter, she traveled with me. So we did everything together, and it meant I could tell the organisation, no, my daughter has a concert today, I will not be in the office. I didn't have to ask permission to anyone for anything I did. So I'd take summers off, and for example, I'd go and work in Singapore and Japan and take my daughter with me. And so she'd get to learn about the countries too. So part of it was that freedom. And the other part of it was about my personal value set. I didn't have to live the corporate life. I could choose my values, my ethics, and how I wanted to be. And obviously, over time, once you gain a reputation, that gets easier. And to be brutally honest, some people would not want me back because I'm tough. You know, they're held accountable, they're expected to get their stuff done, and I will do that, and that's not a popular thing, especially from a female, and with this color skin it has all kinds of connotations. And forgive me, I think it was Matthew that's on the line, who's actually a chap, but generally as a female, you're a bitch if you're tough. So here I am, class 1 certified. Okay, so that answered that one. Jay asked about how do I worry about not having work. I don't worry about it because I've always been good with finance. When Anuli, my daughter, when she was little, I went through a period of not having any work, and that was scary. At the time, she was in Lion King in the West End. She played little Nala. So I had the cost of traveling her to and from, and because of the way a lot of the theatres work, there was nowhere to wait for her while she was in performances. So I used to ride the underground with a book to stay warm and dry, and take my bottle of water with me to keep my costs down and make sure I could do things for my daughter and keep our costs constrained. But I've always been really, really good with financial management. So all these people who say to you, if you've got 2 months of buffer in finance terms, you're fine. I've never lived like that. I've always had at least a year that says, if everything goes wrong, I can pay for myself for at least a year, not for things like holidays and stuff like that, obviously, but the day-to-day living and council tax and bills and all of that kind of thing. It took time to build up, but it was about, I've always lived within my means. I've never paid credit card debt ever. Mortgage I've had, obviously, other things like buying a car, you take out a loan for that, but I've never ever done credit card debt. And part of that's fortune, in that having earning capacity and the discipline to save, but a lot of it is actually discipline. Okay. Great question about imposter syndrome. And Kelly, I'll come back to yours in terms of the contract role. Imposter syndrome is something I go through every time. So 10 minutes before this call, I was talking to my daughter and going, I feel sick, don't know what this is going to be like. And she, as usual, goes, but it'll be fine. You know this. And I've brought her up to know that it's fine to be scared. It's fine to feel nervous. You know, you're a bunch of strangers with the exception of Jay, but you're actually a bunch of potentially new friends and contacts. So that's how I go into it, and I sit and quake, and normally when I've got any kind of presentation, whether it's virtual or real, I normally throw up a couple of times beforehand, because the nerves get in the way. I make sure I eat something substantial. This morning was cornbread, which I'd made earlier in the week, so that I know I can keep it down and not need to run to the toilet. Those are important factors. I don't ever get over imposter syndrome, and I think the naming of it as imposter syndrome is also a challenge. What I prefer to call it is humility. Yes, I get nervous. Yes, I get scared. Yes, I get anxious about whether I can deliver enough, but actually it's called humility. And neurolinguistic programming, which you might all be interested to learn more about, but NLP, neuro of the brain, linguistic language, programming, how you use it. If you take that concept of when you feel nervous, you're already fully resourced, then I know that when I've got nerves, that's reminding me the discipline of being humble and knowing that I don't know everything. So it's okay to go into a meeting and not know the answer. It's okay to come on a call and for everybody to dislike you. As much as that's awful, it's okay, because it's about you inside and the people that you love. I feel it every day. And as you can probably see, I'm getting emotional about it, even in the thought process. But it is human, and being fallible is human, and that's okay. What's not okay is being derogatory and being arrogant and assuming you know everything, because you can't. I know nothing about you. I know a little about Jay, but I know nothing about the rest of you because you're all new to me. So how can I talk to your needs? And the only way we do that is that chat. Okay. Kelly asked about going down the contract route. My contracts vary an awful lot. So there was one that I took on many, many years ago up in Scotland where they said, come in and have a chat. And this was an oil company. And they said, we want to replace this system with this system. We don't know what the new system looks like yet, but we want to do it in 3 months. I fell off my chair laughing and said, that's just not possible. I said, I can do a feasibility study and an assessment for you in that time if you give me some people, but I know I won't deliver on that. So I'm not prepared to take that job. And that's part of my ethics. I won't do something that I know I can't do. And if I know I've got skills but not knowledge, I'll say I can bring these skills, but it's going to be a learning curve. So one of my selling points is being brutally honest or disarmingly honest, depending on whether you're talking to a man or a woman. So I tend to, with chaps, I tend to go, just to be brutally honest, this is how I am. You will always get the truth from me. And I live that no matter how difficult. So that 3-month contract turned into 23 months. And I worked between London, Aberdeen and Paris. So that was great fun. But it was, and what I did with them is I said, I will only commit to a rolling 6-month contract. And if you feel I'm not delivering or not performing, then we both terminate, or indeed you tell me you don't want me anymore. And in fact, in the end, it was me going, get off. I need to go and do something new. So there's a balance of that. Okay. Claire's asked a really interesting question around tips for being self-disciplined, focusing. There are so many things. The first thing is give your self permission to know that it's weird not seeing other people. And being at home, I mean, I'm lucky, I've worked bloody hard, but I have a lovely home and I enjoy it, and I have a garden, so I've got space. There are so many things. Getting showered, eating decent meals, not eating crap all the time is really important. You have your days where you'll eat sugar and chocolate all the time and crisps and stuff, but it's about being disciplined, because what you eat also makes you sluggish. So for example, I talked about eating cornbread. I made that, and I know that it has corn in it and chilies and eggs and milk, and you know, it has a lot of good content to it, and it's all natural because I don't buy a lot of canned and processed stuff. So and part of me being disciplined is enjoying the things I love. I love to cook and bake. So I put that to an advantage to make things that are great to eat and healthy to eat, and sometimes indulgent. So for example, I've made some chocolate brownies, great recipe, and I've put blueberries in them and hazelnuts. So I've still got the balance of proteins and vitamins and stuff like that. Other self-disciplines are taking time to breathe. I know it sounds so simple, but it's actually breathing all the way down. It's so easy when you're sitting in a meeting, particularly sitting at home, we slouch. So for example, I've got, you can see it behind me, I have a rug, just to keep my back straight and keep my lower back tucked in, because actually your posture affects your breathing, and that affects the energy to your brain, and all of that will just drive you bonkers. The other thing I do is I only drink water during the day. Notice during the day, it's there's time for gin and tonics now and again, but I drink water, lots of it. And if I'm not getting through, in old money, around a pint glass, if I'm not getting through a pint glass at least every hour, then I'm not drinking enough. Another thing I do, because we live in a house, I run up and down the stairs between calls. And I know that sounds terribly healthy. Sometimes I crawl, sometimes I stamp if the call's been really bad. But I do that too, and just, Jay's cracking up. But I do. Sometimes you just need to go, and forgive me, Jay, bugger, 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 and you stamp your way up the stairs. And then you kind of float down, because that's easy enough, and then you're ready to start again. But take the time. You notice I've got an image behind me, that's from my garden. So that's another thing I do, is, and it's free. I took my own photograph, I upload it, and as I'm looking at all of you, I'm looking at the bright colours of the garden and going, remember, all of this is around me. And in my job, nobody gets lost or killed. So that also gives you perspective to keep going. I don't know whether that helps or not. So feel free if there's any follow-up question on that one, Claire.
I saw a big thumbs up there, so I think that was really
Cool.
helpful. I'm not sure if you did answer this one. It was from Kim. Did you do most of your qualifications alongside working?
Oh, I've just seen it. Yes, it was just below your imposter syndrome. I was just looking at it going, right, there it is. Thank you. So this is a difficult one. So I'm somebody who, I never did a degree, so I don't have that degree status, but I have taught both undergraduate and postgraduate at UCL. So not having the degree hasn't stopped me. It's given me more of an imposter syndrome, but I own it, as I'm doing with you, by saying, actually, I don't have a degree. The qualifications such as the PMP, PMQ and things like that, I did those as I was working. So, and again, I'm quite focused like that. I love language, I love reading, I've always got books around. So I'm always learning and looking to grow. So I did those alongside the other certifications, the fellowship of the Higher Education Authority, which entitles me to teach as well, it accreditates me to teach. My registered project professional, my chartership, those were all about assembling a body of evidence to show what I'd done, how I'd done it, how I'd contributed back. So I've never given myself the luxury of coming out and doing full-time education. And as you'll appreciate, my daughter's coming up 22 now, but I also covered all her education and her university costs. So it was more important to me to fund her future than to indulge mine. So my view is I take the time to learn. Anytime I'm interested, I explore. So you'll find me talking about things like quantum metallurgy just because it's so cool. And I'm a nerd and I love it. And it's okay to be a nerd in this household. And I carry it like a badge.
I love that. We're all about nerds here.
Absolutely, it's important. What do I love most about my industry? But I think it's about my discipline. My discipline is project management, and I've worked in so many industries. So I've worked in oil and gas, pharmaceutical, police, local government, IT, obviously, real estate, construction, all kinds of things. So I don't have an industry, I have a discipline, a bit like those of you coming from an events management background. If you can manage an event, you can manage it with any kind of product or service because it's about the management of those skills. So whereas Zanita was talking about this drive-through or drive-in cinema, if you can manage that group of people in a confined space and organize them to get in, see what they want to see and hopefully pay for it, and get them all out again safely, you can manage stuff. And project management is managing stuff, and the stuff varies and your skill set increases as you go along. What has been the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is being 5'2" female of color, and that's the perceptions of I'm supposed to be servile, I'm supposed to get tea, and then I have to burst all of their bubbles. That's probably the biggest challenge. So in meeting rooms, I will quite often, somebody will say, oh, Sheilina, would you like to get the tea? And I just say, no, thank you, and stay seated. Because I'm not there to serve them. Now, if they're my team and I like them, or even if I don't like them, if they're my team, I will serve them because, as you all know, working with people, the success is about the people all contributing, not the person who's managing or leading. And sometimes managing or leading is about feeding and supporting and nurturing more than it is the doing. So the biggest challenges have been, first of all, the perception of female and colour, and secondly is actually my own self-worth and self-value. That whole imposter syndrome thing comes up again where I go, they can't possibly want me. You know, even when Jay said to me, would you like to come and do this? And well, I'm not sure, and let's have a chat. And it was that. So that probably gets in my way more than anything. And as Kim was saying, where she'd had the conversation on Monday, put together the portfolio and driven it out there, that's the discipline. You talked about self-discipline. That's that self-discipline of going, I'm going to give it my best shot. and then it's out of my hands. So Stephen Covey does a really good thing about locus of control. And if you can imagine, he starts off with this small circle, which is self. Then it goes to your inner circle of people you like and trust. Then an outer circle, like Kim's talking about, a potential contact. And then outside these circles, there's the rest of the world that we can do nothing about. And he talks about locus of control and locus of influence, and then everything else. And one of the most important things when you're working alone, as many of us are at the moment, is recognizing what you can and can't control and learning to let go of that. So one of my tools for that, forgive me dipping out the way, is my journal. I write very small, but you can see I keep a journal all the time. I kept them for my daughter growing up. Learning points, books I've loved, places I've been, and restaurants I want to go back to, all kinds of things. So I go with that. Matthew's asked a really interesting question around difficulties moving between industries. Really, I haven't, Matthew, and the reason being is that I bring a discipline and a skill set. So I know that I can bring my skills and apply them anywhere. And if that person that's interviewing me doesn't believe that, then I don't need to be there. There are other opportunities. So it's having that confidence level. I know I can do stuff. I know I can communicate with people. I know that people will choose to listen and indeed talk to me. So I know I have that capability. The rest of it is just stuff. So when I went into the oil and gas industry, I had no idea what pigs were. I don't mean the ones that smell in fields. There is a thing called a pig that it's absolutely huge, but it's actually like a little plunger that travels through pipes, keeping the pipes clean so that oil and gas can be transported without rubbish in it, watching my language, without rubbish in it. But I didn't know that was a pig. For me, didn't see that one. So my first job, God, where do I start? So back at 14 was my first job, working in a local newsagents, filling shelves, serving at the till, that kind of thing. Then I did bar work, which I loved, met all kinds of people and very long hours standing up. Says Anita, when you were talking about being on your feet a long time, I remember that so well. And boy, your feet get sore. And I've done secretarial work, I've done working in banks, all kinds of stuff. But I didn't have there wasn't a typical route for me. I explored, and as I found things I was good at or things I was interested in. So at one point I was working for Blackwell Scientific Publications as an external exhibition coordinator, which is basically a glorified secretary who does stuff. But I loved books, so I wanted to work for a company where I loved what they were doing. And that's part of what I did until I got into project management in my early 20s and then went, okay, I've got a skill set now that I can move around with. Okay. I just heard somebody else speaking. Speak up.
That was me.
Hello,
Sorry,
Joe.
I dropped out for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, you did. You abandoned us, and Kelly took us and held us carefully until you came back again.
Thank you so much.
I carried on and thought at some point Jay will be back. It'll all be fine.
Thank you so much.
That's all right.
I don't have the chat anymore, but if there are a couple
I have them. Yeah, I have the chat open. So favorite industry to manage. I don't have a favorite industry. I have favorite people. Everywhere you work, you will find people that you like and people that you want to socially distance for forever. And that's the case. I'm conscious that Claire talked about tips for working remotely. So I'd like to pick up on that. In terms of favorite industry, really sorry, Claire, I don't actually have one. It's people. So in terms of tips for working remotely, you'll notice I've stuck a bright colour on. That's another thing about discipline for working at home. If you stick a bright colour on, your mood will brighten. It's a subconscious reaction. So that's something to think about when you're getting ready to do stuff. Wear something you love. So for example, this necklace is from a lady who used to be my mentor. She passed away a couple of years ago, Mary Virginia. and the earrings are from my grandmother and things like that. So I wear things that bring me joy, and generally they're just additional comfort. So they're the confidence that I wear into a call, for example. I actually think it's actually quite advantageous to be in a virtual situation with a new team. And that's because, for example, at the moment, I've got Jay as my biggest image. I don't know about your screens, but Jay is my biggest image right now. And what that means is that I can see her physical interactions really clearly. So, and because again, I'm empathic naturally, but neurolinguistic programming, self-awareness, interest in anthropology, all of that has helped me read people better. So you can see when people are engaged, disengaged. What you can't see is the reason why. So, for example, Claire, I can see your camera must be slightly off to one side, because where I'm looking versus where you're looking is slightly off course. So what I would say is, for example, there I'd be saying to you, be aware in that screenshot when you're prepping for your call, where are your eyes going? So mine, I keep them directly at the screen, because if my camera was here, I'd talk over here, and all you're seeing is the side of me, and that shows disinterest. So even something as basic as that, sorry, coughing down the thing. I do use my hands a lot. I don't apologize for it. I'm somewhere in my heritage, I must be Italian or something. I use my hands. And that's part of me. But for example, if you saw Kim and Kim don't move, or indeed Jay, you'll see that they're both doing that. From a language perspective, that's amplified listening. It's not my head's tired and I'm resting it. You can tell the difference, because head's tired, the face sags, whereas both of them have got their face very prompt and they're leaning, which actually is like an antenna that accents the listening. So you're listening even more closely, and that's a huge compliment. Doesn't mean those of you who aren't listening, they're just practicing amplified listening in that moment. Okay. And if somebody is looking away from a screen or something like that, you can say, is there something urgent you need to deal with? You appear to be distracted. Don't judge, ask. And that's one of the most difficult things. So, for example, for us in the last 3 or 4 months, we've had a violent death in the family. I had COVID. I've had friends losing jobs, losing loved ones, all that kind of thing. And with choosing to volunteer with the Good Sam app, I sometimes end up talking to people who are recently bereaved and things like that. So there's quite a lot going on. So for example, I might come onto a call and I might have forgotten a background, and I might just be sitting there looking like I'm bored. Actually, I've just got too much going on. And we need to take the time to ask those questions. So one of the things I would encourage you to do, Claire, is to have separate calls with your new team. I think it was Claire, wasn't it, that has a new team coming? Thank you. Have separate calls with each person, first of all, to say, how are you feeling about virtual? How's it working for you? What are the challenges you're finding? What do you find uncomfortable? Do you like presenting? Do you prefer to present slides so that they don't see your face? What do you prefer? Okay. How long do you like a call to be before you need a break? Do some of the human stuff and get to know them as people. So, when Jay and I first spoke, we spoke about the image that's on her mantelpiece, and I learned that was from her sister, and the meaning around it. So notice things if people let you. So I've got a background, which means you can't see it. That's a choice, but then ask about the image. Where does the image come from? What's that representing for you? Or acknowledging, if you like it, be authentic. It's beautiful, or that's an unusual image, which is, good God, what is that? But a nice way of saying it. So you can just inquire. Okay. Another thing to do, particularly on a virtual team, is ask them for things that they like to do, like do they like to cook? Do they like to travel? Is there a particular artist that they like? You've got to feel the room for what people's interests are. Sadly, as I have, and no judgment, some people I work with only like reality TV. I kind of take a deep breath and go, okay, so I know almost nothing about reality TV. Tell me what your favorite programs are. And then I do make the effort to try and watch a bit of one. And then I can at least ask questions on it. I won't suffer through it because it's not my thing, but I do ask questions. But things like that, films that appeal to people, you get an idea of their adrenaline and where their drivers are. When you're with a new team, you need to be careful about things like Black Lives Matter. and things like that. For me, it's a primary topic. Our family is of colour, so it's important to us. So I will say that and let people know that if they've got questions or want to talk about it, I'm open to doing that. Equally, one of the things I don't tolerate is intolerance for LGBTQ stuff. So I'll make a point to talk about that very early on to let people know what the standards are. Okay, so things like that, and that's me and my values, and obviously I can only speak for myself, but those are things that are important to me, that we respect all of the nonsense that goes on with ageism, sexism, colorism, racism, of course. And if you're not familiar with differences between racism and colorism, happy to take you through that. But it's about setting your stamp on the team to say, right, this is the call, this is what we're here to do. Keep to time, ideally finish a bit early if you can, or call breaks. And if we've had a particularly intense discussion, I'll say, does everyone need a 5-minute comfort break? And what I do then is I don't take the break. And I say to people, everyone, we're resuming at this time. I'm here if anyone wants to chat. And that gives a chance to vent or explore other things. Okay. I'll pause there, Claire, only because there was a question from Matthew about traditional projects versus waterfall and agile. Um, this language is unfamiliar for lots of people, so I'll start off talking a bit about a standard project lifecycle, a PLC, which is not public limited company, but project or program lifecycle. When I teach, I talk about knowing a bit of your alphabet, C, D, E, F, the concept, the development of your concept, the execution of it, and the finish. If you know that, you know a basic project life cycle. Okay, and when we talk about waterfall or traditional cycle, that's what we're talking about. We go step by step through the different things we need to do, and that's how we talk about a project. So if you think about that in terms of getting ready for a call, your concept is, I want to attend this call, I think it might be interesting, I'd like to see people that are familiar, and it gives me a moment of socializing in an otherwise lonely day. Different people, different reasons. So then if I develop that idea, what day is it? Can I make sure my calendar's clear? Can I make sure my laptop's charged up, my headset's working? What do I want to wear? I don't do the what do I want to wear until the day, but some people do. But you develop that concept, then you execute it by being ready on time, being available with whatever sustenance you need, whether that's water, biscuits, whatever, and then being fully present, which means your phone's there, but you're not going to answer it, or it's on silent, or in case with the NHS app that I do, I've turned it off so I can't get an alarm call during this time. Okay, so that's the execution of it. And then the most important part, particularly for us at the moment, is when it finishes, take that 5 or 10 minutes to go, what did I learn? What questions do I now have? What am I going to do with this? So that you actually see some benefit from it. And then we maintain things like a CPD log, a continuing professional development. What am I doing to develop myself? What were my learnings? What will I do differently? What will I do the same? Okay, so that's all in the traditional waterfall thing. Matthew's also mentioned agile, and that's an interactive process. So for example, let's say Jay and I were talking about doing a new project together, and we were throwing around ideas. So we might start off by saying, I know, let's do this on a Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. So we put that in the calendar, and then we go, actually, most people currently don't like being up at 9. Maybe we should do a 10 or 10:30. So we react and adjust. So working in an agile way, we tend to do bits of things and be much more change oriented. So in a waterfall and the sequence project lifecycle, you talk about a structure for the project and a structured approach to change. So every change has to be approved, every change has to be planned in. In an agile environment, you adjust as you learn more. So for example, forgive me, just coughing. That's another trip, by the way. Move the microphone away. And I strongly recommend headsets if you're doing lots of calls. It really changes the quality. And for example, there's building work going on opposite me, and you're not hearing it because I've constrained the sound and the volume. So taking that agile idea and the idea of change control. If I were inviting you all for dinner, I'd start off by saying, well, my origins are African Indian, so I'd like to do that kind of food. And then somebody might private message me and go, actually, I can't bear chilies. And then I would amend that to say, well, I'll still do that style of food, but I will make sure that the chilies are on the side so you can add, sorry, drink of water. Another discipline is sipping water more frequently than you think you need it. So then I'd adapt the recipe according to what you needed. And then I might get another message going, actually, I really don't like spicy food at all. And then what I'd do is say, don't worry, I'll add another dish of something that is more regular or more European, so that it becomes another option for everyone and doesn't single out the one person who's reluctant. And what I'd say to them is, do try a little bit of something else just to explore it, but you're not obliged to eat it. So you're reacting and responding in a very different way. And that's very different to going to a set dinner where there is no variation offered. That's more of a structured waterfall type approach. Matthew, I hope that covers your question. I'm sorry, I built it into explanations, but I've always managed a combination. And my personal opinion is it's BS to say that there's traditional and agile. That's simply not true. It's both. You're very welcome, Matthew. It's both all of the time. So there are times where you've got a meeting agenda. So Claire, with your new team, you might decide to go through things, and then somebody raises an issue and you decide to take a detour and solve that. That's an agile management approach. So to say that you're only agile or only traditional is absolute nonsense. It's all integrated, but people are making a lot of money out of talking agile, and agile in software development has been around more than 20 years. But it's now called agile, and you can do qualifications for Scrum and agile and so on, where actually you could read and learn and know how to do it anyway.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sheilina. That was
Very
absolutely
welcome.
fantastic.